So that brings us to our time together today. It is our joy to welcome Dr. Tracy Trothen as our keynote speaker and thought leader for our program throughout today. Dr. Trothen joined the faculty at Queen's University in 2002, following 4 years as assistant professor of ethics and pastoral theology at the University of Winnipeg. Her responsibility at Queen's has included teaching systematic theology, serving as director of field education, head of the theological studies program, and appointments in the School of Religion, the School of Rehabilitation Therapy, a joint appointment that she continues to hold today. In addition, Dr. Trothen is a spiritual director, associate member of the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy, certified specialist in supervisor education with the Canadian Association for Spiritual Care. She served as a fellow of the International Society for Science and Religion and is an affiliate member of Ingenuity Labs, Faculty of Engineering and Applied Science. Do you sleep ever? My goodness, Dr. Trothen. I'm only halfway through this thing. Her work is grounded in a bachelor's degree from Queen's University in history and psychology, Master of Divinity from Queen's Theological College, and her Doctor of Theology from Emmanuel College, University of Toronto. She's an ordained clergy with the United Church of Canada. Here are just a sampling of her media exposures on the CBC Radio, BBC Interview, Baptist News. Titles of her articles include Sports, Spirituality, and Religion, New Intersections and Global Challenges, Technology, Medicine, Ethics and Religion, Body Matters, Pandemic Theoethics, a Liminal Zone. Dr. Trothen's research scholarship came to our attention in 2021 when she presented at the virtual International Conference on Spirituality and Aging. Her question about whether we can outrun death and her observation of the ethics of what is called pro-longevity sparked our imagination and the invitation to welcome her here. So today we welcome Dr. Tracy Trothen to our stage to lead our time of reflections.
Thank you so much for those very kind words. I'm so honored. Oh, thank you. Technology to advance my slides. It's perfect. I would have forgotten about that. Thank you so much for coming here today. And I'm very, very honored to be part of this conversation here today. And I always find that I learn so much from the other perspectives that are brought by so many diverse people who are interested in aging adults and wellness and today technology. So today I am one of those people who have to wear a mask because my husband has lymphoma and his oncologist made me promise that I would always wear a mask when I went public. And she did say I don't need to stop going places, which is wonderful. But I have to admit that this piece of applied technology is a little bit hard to get used to sometimes, but you know, I guess it's a pretty small price to pay. So I'm grateful to all the scientists who've managed to figure out, you know, that this is important. I'm also grateful to scientists who managed to figure out this piece of technology too, that Reverend Beth helped me find online, an app that shows a clock and the clock doesn't go dark, so you can keep track of it. There's so much with technology that is making such a big difference in our world. So we're going to talk this morning a little bit about some of the types of technologies that are being created out there right now. And then I'm also going to introduce something about Christianity as an example of a religion this morning and ethical issues that we can think about when we approach technology. This afternoon, we'll look more at spirituality and how a more general understanding of spirituality intersects with questions about technology. So before I get going, I want to do a quick survey with you. A lot of this technology is aimed to make our lives better, to make us healthier, to help us live longer and fuller, happier lives. So, and this question goes out to you too, who are joining us by Zoom. You can just think of the answer to yourself, and I'll ask for a show of hands in this room. How many of you, if I had a pill that I could pull out right now, that you could take and suffer no ill effects and would live to be 500 years old, how many of you would take that pill? And you have to decide right now. How many would take it? 500 years, guaranteed. Okay, a few people. How many people would definitely not take it? Wow. How many people just are so confused they're not sure? Okay, so let me tweak this a little bit more. And if I say to you that if you take the pill, you will live well, you will be healthy, you'll be mobile, your cognition will be in excellent shape. And not only that, but the people that you love will also have the opportunity to take the pill. How many of you would take the pill now? Okay, how many of you would not? Okay, so those numbers changed dramatically. For those of you who are on Zoom, the first questions, it was, no, I don't want to take it, was pretty overwhelming. And the second time I asked that question with the qualification, the opposite was true. So when I've asked this question to classes of students, first of all, people tend to say, actually, it's the young male students tend to say, I'll take the pill really fast. And more often than not, the younger female students are, oh, no, I can't. And find out why. And it has to do with relationship. I'm really worried that I won't have my family or my friends, and I'm just not sure what this means. So now this isn't true across the board. There are, of course, a lot of differences, but it's very interesting to me. So I like to ask that question and see where we're at. And then after we talk more about this, maybe we can check back in at the end of the day and see if the answer is different again. We shall see. So those are the objectives for this morning. Again, I just want to look at some of the tech. I want to look at some of the language involved in this conversation about technology and aging, and then want to introduce the whole idea of religion by way of Christianity, to ask a few ethics questions and give some different perspectives on those ethics questions. This will be a very quick survey. And there's plenty more ethics questions than I will be able to bring up this morning. So I invite you to keep thinking about what those could be. Let's get into this. What's in a name? Why is it important to say, what do we call this conversation? Why do we choose to use the term pro in brackets and longevity for this discussion today? Well, terms are really loaded. If you look in a lot of aging and health and ethics books and textbooks especially, there's often a chapter in there on anti-aging medicine, it's called. And when you hear the phrase anti-aging, we're usually thinking this is a bad thing because it's anti, it's against. This is not what we want. And often the content of that chapter will be slanted towards, this is a bad thing, indeed, because there is a risk of introducing new science and technologies to either slow down the effects of aging or even stop them, that has the potential then for suggesting to us that anything to do with aging is bad. And therefore, people who are aging are bad, are not worth as much. So we do need to be very, very careful with that, because there is that thread in there when we want to overcome something or address it or fix it, we risk that implicit message that it's not acceptable to be older. And that is a very real thing. We need to be attentive to, again, the words we use and why we use them. So anti-aging highlights the danger of ageism in using these technologies, devaluing older adults. Other times we hear the word therapy being used. And therapy, right? Do you think bad when you hear therapy? How many think bad when you hear therapy? How many think good when you hear therapy? Right, me too. So therapy is something usually where we're trying to seek the good, to heal people, to help them. So it's a very different word than anti-aging medicine. Therapy, very different. And a therapeutic intervention, again, is something that we immediately are led to think, okay, this is a really good thing. I want something that is going to be therapeutic to help me to be healthier, stronger, better. Radical life extension is another term that's used in this conversation. Radical life extension is about that very question I was asking you. Do you want to live 500 years? Is it possible to radically extend our life to 150 years? And scientists are talking about, yes, this is possible, or 130, depending on who you talk to. That's a very doable goal. Well, is that radical life extension, or is that just therapeutic intervention, a natural kind of evolution of science? Hard to say. Enhancement. We have a lot of conversations around using the term therapy or enhancement. So therapy is clearly, those healing strategies. Enhancement, we tend to think of the added extras, plastic surgery, maybe some toy we can play with technology-wise, maybe an embedded computer chip that can open a door. But at what point does something that we think of as an added extra, an enhancement, actually become therapeutic to us too? And why do we tend to think in ethics of enhancements as being bad and therapy as being good? Because sometimes they really do connect. I mean, for some people, for example, one of my students brought up this example a while ago. She said, what about breast augmentation? And that's not so much an aging issue usually, but people will think of that usually as an added extra plastic surgery just to go along with social norms. But what if that intervention, that cosmetic intervention, makes the difference between somebody's capacity to want to live and live a good life or to want to do self-harm? Therapy enhancement. It's complicated. Transhumanism is another term that's part of these conversations. So transhumanism basically refers to a movement where we're focused on radical life extension. Becoming immortal is the ultimate goal of transhumanism. And embedded in transhumanist thought is the conviction that it should be all about individual choice, right? My body, my choice, that's it. Whereas if you approach it from a spiritual or religious perspective, we really need to pay attention to what my choices, how my choices impact you. And if I choose to go a certain direction, I'm using certain resources. What difference does that make if everybody chooses to go that way to the world? So I'm just going to put that out there right now for you to think about. But what's called morphological freedom, right? Freedom of the body is key to transhumanist thinkers. And again, as Beth was saying so well, that question of better and who's better, how do you decide what makes you better? Are you good enough right now or not? What would make you a better human being? And you can see where a spiritual worldview, it's going to shape that response in different ways. But if we don't think about it deliberately, we often simply absorb our cultural messages in the media about what makes us better, right? Like more money, we want to have the right clothes, the right haircut, the right title, whatever that is. But there's a set of social beliefs that aren't necessarily going to make us feel better or be better human beings by different standards. What does it mean to be better? And pro-longevity, we chose that term for a lot of words, but with the brackets around pro especially, right, the question mark. How do we approach the question of longevity? It is a question. Do we want longevity for the sake of longevity? Or do we want longevity because we have an opportunity to live a richer, fuller life? Some of our relationships could benefit from us being around longer or being healthier. What is it? What's our reason? What's our motivation? And we'll continue to pay attention to that question. So let's look at some tech inventions. And I come at this somewhat cautiously, because with the disclaimer that I am not a scientist, I'm not an engineer. I get to engage with colleagues who are, and they know much more than I do. But I do know of a few tech examples that I could put out there, and I'm sure that many of you will know of a lot more than I do. So first of all, comfort bots are becoming much more important and alive in healthcare and in retirement homes, homes for the aging of different types. What's a comfort bot? Well, it's a robot, right? And this robot, especially in times of a pandemic, can assist in the collecting of medical database too, like blood pressure, stats like that. More than that, these bots can provide interaction and help mitigate loneliness for people who are in care homes, in hospital. There can be interaction. Mindy is an example, and I'll show you a picture of Mindy shortly. Mindy is a bot that's being used in some Ontario retirement homes and was introduced during the pandemic. And initial studies about how Mindy is being received are very positive. The vast majority of aging adults who experienced a visit with Mindy said they wanted another one, and soon. So there's an entertainment value, a sense of connection. I don't think we can discount or minimize how important those factors can be to one's sense of happiness, well-being, but how far does it go? What are the limits? How good are these bots? Pepper is another example of a similar bot to Mindy. Pero is a pet seal. So there are these pets that are robots. Some of you may have heard of that can be, petted like stuffed animals. They can make sounds, they can move. They can be quite comforting for someone to hold on to. At the same time, there are dangers to the use of these bots. And again, what are the limits? And we'll talk more about that later. There's chat bots. So what's a chat bot? Well, a chat bot you access online in the internet. So you can just go on if you're interested and look up Replica sometime. We'll talk more about Replica a bit later too today. But Replica is a chat bot that you can sign up for free. You could pay more money and get the voice version, or you can just go online and have an online conversation with a chat bot who is an avatar, so a picture, a cartoon almost created in what image you choose, but there are actually only a few choices of avatars, and all of them are young in appearance and able-bodied. They are there's a non-binary option, so neither male nor female, but there's no older adult option, there's no different body shape option, there's no avatar with a visible disability. So it's interesting. We have to ask questions about this because people do report again that Replica comforts them. We'll talk more about that. Wearable tech is fascinating. Hearing aids, right? Hearing aids are getting better and better. Any of you who have hearing aids or know of someone with hearing aids, it's quite amazing as long as you can make the choice to actually wear them, right? So I have a couple of family members who have these amazing hearing aids, but they don't often make it in the ear. Vision wear, so your glasses, putting them on in the morning. Some people say that we're already cyborgs because of our interface with technology, that we've got technology that we wear for glasses, brushing our teeth we were talking about this morning, our phones are virtually attached to us most of the time. We have Fitbits, smartwatches. How many of you have a smartwatch or a Fitbit? Yeah, look around, it's the majority, right? They become part of our lives and we depend on them, and they can motivate us to get more exercise, just give us more information, they're a toy too for us to play with, to access our emails because, we don't do enough work for work's purposes as it is, right? We need to be on call with our emails 24/7. And some of this can be really handy, and then there's downsides, right? There's upsides and downsides. One piece of technology that really intrigued me that I just learned about is the smart ring. How many of you heard of a smart ring? So a few of you. So it's just like this picture that I have on the slide here. These rings come in different shapes and styles. And basically they're a smartphone, but they're designed to be a ring. They're smaller, they're more compact. You can get notifications about emails. Some of them have little tiny screens on them that give you a couple of words about an email that's there, or a text message can show up actually on a ring. You're going to see more, more and more wearable jewelry that isn't just a smartwatch, that goes beyond it. So why do we have this? You know, what kind of money are we putting into these pieces of technology? Why are we doing that? What's the behind the choice that we make to go out and get the newest, latest, and greatest? There are some good reasons, and maybe there are some questionable reasons there. VR, virtual reality headsets, huge new thing. How many of you have an Oculus headset? There are a couple, right? So most of you may not have heard of this yet. How many of you are aware that these headsets exist? Okay, so I've decided I want one. I don't have one yet, but I want one because there's so much going on in the metaverse. How many of you know about the metaverse? Bitcoin, you know, there's a financial system that is strictly in the Ethernet, and the metaverse is just that alternative world that is through virtual reality. So you put on these headsets and you can join different communities and have interaction with bots that feel human, with other humans who have avatars there. So what kind of relationships are those? Well, there's a lot of debate on that, but it does allow us, if we're homebound, to engage with other people and to engage with nature. You can go for a walk right in the forest without leaving your chair inside, and it looks shockingly real. And so it can have a lot of the benefits of a forest walk in your own room. There is even a church, there's several churches, but the VR church, if you Google that sometime, you'll be quite amazed. They do virtual baptisms even. Now, again, we can have a lot of conversations about whether these things are good or bad or theologically sound or not, but they're out there and they're happening now. And certainly during the pandemic, a lot of these options have been thriving. So let's think more about that. Smart contact lenses. Did you know that you can wear contact lenses that can detect glaucoma, diabetes? So you may not know you have it, but you wear these lenses and it taps into different biomarkers in your body and can give you a heads up on those health issues, those very important health issues. So there's Mindy, who I was talking about, who is making the rounds at retirement homes. Mindy has a screen where Mindy can deliver different messages or ask questions through the screen, and also verbally ask questions too through a computerized voice. And that's just a picture of someone using a VR headset, using a really pretty surround as they do it. That's not required. You can simply put the headset on and go. And more tech. There's lots of tech, lots of artificial intelligence being used in healthcare and elsewhere, more so than you might know. Some of you are well acquainted with how AI is being used in healthcare, and you're likely involved in the front line of that, many of you. But coding and algorithms for healthcare diagnoses have shown to be incredibly valuable for several mental health conditions, as well as physical conditions, to ask screening questions, to tap into databases with a variety of information to help diagnose and even to suggest treatments. You can imagine where a lot of this could be very useful, first of all, in saving the time of some of our healthcare practitioners. Secondly, in being able to check out databases that one person alone wouldn't have immediate access to in their heads. So there's options there. I mean, think about too, globally, where we don't have very many healthcare workers or great access to doctors. If you have access to the internet, it's going to be possible to use AI to provide healthcare support where we couldn't otherwise have it. What do we lose with this? We're going to be thinking about that too, right? What are the potential losses? And we'll raise more of those questions when we look at spirituality this afternoon. There are even spiritual discipline apps. So mindfulness apps that can take us on a meditation journey and keep us accountable even through nudges. So a nudge is a reminder through artificial intelligence to do something, take it on to do your mindfulness session, even to brush your teeth. Smart rosary bracelets. So they track your prayers using a rosary if you're a Roman Catholic. Robo Rabbi. So if you're a Jewish person, you can sign up to Robo Rabbi and get a meditation or a prayer delivered to your inbox every day. And you don't have to belong to any of these religions in order to use and try out any of these apps. So there's the potential too for increasing awareness of these different religions and making them more accessible to followers. And blessing bots, right? So if a priest or a minister, a pastor isn't available right away, or even if they are, you can have the robobot there to deliver a blessing. And some people find this very, again, engaging and new, and it makes them want to come, perhaps, to church. That's always a big question, isn't it? How do we get more people to go to church or faith communities? Well, maybe some of these bots could provide a bit of an answer. I don't know. And again, we'll look at the downsides too, because there are some downsides. There are cognitive enhancements, ranging from caffeine. You drink your morning coffee and we get a little sharper, or at least a little more awake. Modafinil, so prescription drugs that can help people who have sleep disorders like narcolepsy. Potentially, we can use these medications to sharpen cognition in some ways. We're also seeing new pharmaceuticals emerging that may help with dementia. We don't know yet, but they continue to do work on that. So you've got a lot of therapeutic healing work being done. We've also just got the desire to be able to think even faster than we already do, even if we already have a very acceptable cognitive status. Connected to cognitive enhancements, if we can think better and better, we can create more and more technology which could potentially be destructive, right? So there are people who are saying, well, if we have that, then we need moral enhancements. We need pharmaceuticals that can make us more moral. Now, there's a lot of problems with that one, because who gets to decide what the virtues are, what the values are, and how do we even define those values? And how much can you really enhance morally through pharmaceuticals or through brain stimulation? But the conversation on that front rage on. So we're looking at all these different ways of enhancing, of supposedly making us better with technology. And I think there's a good case for a lot of these technologies to say that they can make us better in some ways. But that again depends on my worldview and what I mean by better. There's also a lot of reasons to be very cautious and critical. So other potential and real tech right now, first of all, we know all about emergency aids for help to detect falls. These are great. We really need this, and we're getting better and better at that technology so that the devices that people can wear are smaller and less intrusive and easier to read a fall, more effective at that. This is wonderful stuff. Even an Apple Watch can have a fall detection device on it. Remarkable, right? It's going to become more accessible in terms of paying for that kind of a service now too. We've got Alexa. How many of you have Alexa or Siri or Google? Me too. Hey Google, good morning. Give me my morning joke, the news. We can lock the doors, turn on the lights with voice-controlled AI, alarm clocks. As some of my colleagues in planning for this conference has reminded me, we have smart toilets now. So smart toilets are great. How many of you know what a smart toilet is? So they're not as well known, right? But they're just really a bidet, so water cleaner function And not only that, though, when you sit down and stand up, it will automatically flush, like a lot of the toilets we have, including in this space here, so that no one needs to, you don't need to reach around and try to flush. It minimizes that kind of movement aggravation. And for people who have difficulty in cleaning themselves afterwards, it has the bidet function right there. Arguably saves on toilet paper and a bunch of other things. So what's happening out there is happening so quickly, we don't even hear about them often. You can take a look at the rest of that list. Smart refrigerators are really interesting because apparently, and I don't have one of these and haven't seen one, but apparently a smart fridge can take note of all the best before dates or expiry dates on food and let you know and say, get rid of this, think about eating this or that, reminding you what's in the fridge, telling you how to organize your fridge. I don't know if I'd like that. And giving you a grocery list and the whole thing, right? And better temperature control for each of the compartments and so on and so forth. For aging adults in particular, there are different nudges that are available. So you could put in a bathroom a surveillance camera that can monitor and keep track if someone takes their meds in the bathroom, if that's where they take their meds. And if they don't, to remind them verbally, a voice will come out saying, have you taken your medication today? Or have you brushed your teeth this morning? You need to brush your teeth now. You need to wash your face. So for those people who are suffering from a level of dementia, this could be very helpful. It could also be pretty disturbing to hear this disembodied voice, right? So this isn't all straightforward and easy, but science is trying to make devices that are more applicable and marketable. And we have tech of mobility aids too. The mobility aids are becoming much better and more effective. Now, justice issues, right? The access, the cost of these things are actually very, very, very expensive and not available to everybody. And then we're moving right into genetic modification therapies and gene editing and CRISPR. And some of us often get worried about this. At the same time, it's very promising and exciting. And it's not as new, the technology, as we would think. So we think back to heart surgery that came up in the 50s. And at first, heart surgery was regarded as tampering with God's life creation and something that was taboo, and we should not be messing with the heart. We messed with the heart. And I'm so grateful because I know people who are living now who wouldn't be living with us without heart surgery. It's remarkable. We accept heart surgery as normal. We desire it. We hire people who can do these complicated surgeries. It's wonderful. Now we're working with genes, and the same fears have been brought up, right? This is tampering potentially with God's sacred creation of life. But we're called, from a religious perspective, to healing. All faith traditions believe in healing and hold that up as a ethical mandate. So the question again of how far we go, what we consider normal and acceptable, and is it possible that what we're doing now will become just normal and acceptable and highly desirable? Some of the treatments that we had the first, you had the first FDA approved genetic modification therapy in 2018 with Kymrea, which is a genetic modification technology that uses an older gene editing, gene insertion approach that is not gene editing. It's using the shell of a virus like the cold to inject more healthy whole genes to replace damaged ones. And in the case of Kymrea, that's a kind of leukemia that primarily affects children and is deadly, will kill them for sure. And this therapy is incredibly successful in saving their lives. The earlier trials showed about 83% of the recipients were in complete remission after 6 months. I don't know what the stats are, the reviews are right now, but that's just a complete page changer, field changer. And we have gene therapies now for type of heritable blindness. So there are things that are happening, but these therapies, I'll mention again later, are so expensive. They're prohibitively expensive. So even in a country like mine, Canada, where we have a healthcare system that does provide standard therapies to people for free, if it's not considered a standard therapy, it's not available for you. It's not for free. So why is something not considered a standard therapy? Well, sometimes it's not just because it's not, it's medically suspect or it doesn't work that well. It can work really well, but be so out of reach financially that it's not going to be accepted. So it's complicated. Our healthcare systems are complicated. We need to keep asking really hard questions about why certain things are available and why they're not. So lots of other possibilities there on the page, but let's take a brief pause just for a few minutes to see if there are you have any thoughts or questions about those technologies. There's a couple of microphones in the middle. If any of you have something that's sitting in your head that you'd like to share with the rest of us or put out there. This one's not. Oh, and this one goes in. I'll let you do it. How's that? I can hold this though. Thanks. This is technology. It's great. I'm really glad that I'm not the one in charge. If there aren't any questions or comments right now, well, there might be one. Great. We'll definitely have time at the end too. I'll take some time at the end. Is it on?
Okay, is that on?
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
You may get back to this in a little bit, but when the cochlear implants in particular just made me think. I have a friend.
Yeah.
I'll call him Steve. Steve has had hearing loss since he was a child, and it's just gotten progressively worse. And he worked in the tech industry. And one of the things that he talked about was because he worked in the industry, he didn't want to get the implant because the businesses come into business
Mm-hmm.
and then they go out of business. And, and then you've got this hardware, which is no longer supported, can't get a software update or there's some sort of glitch, and you're just kind of stuck at that point because it's not a reversible process.
Yes, excellent point, Craig. This is you can opt for some very life-changing technologies that are embedded in the human body, including there's tech for deafness where they drill into your skull and can put an implant here, which looks a lot like a cyborg that you'd expect a cyborg to look like. And yeah, as things get updated and changed, what does that mean for technology that you have embedded in your body? And there'd be a lot of risks to trying to move that technology out. And it may be that you worsen your condition. And these are the possible risks and downside of any technology that interfaces directly with your body and could be permanent. There's also big questions around, again, what it needs to be fixed. So if we're fixing hearing, there are many people who have a hearing culture, a deaf culture that is really important to them, and they could be excluded from that culture. So there are other costs, social costs, that sometimes we don't take into account if we decide that something is a disability that needs to be fixed. But who gets to decide that? Often our differences aren't disabilities to us. They're who we are. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to proceed because I just want to introduce to you a few ethical questions, and then at the end, we'll pause again and for some comments and questions. So I'm going to go through these next few slides probably fairly quickly. So when we're thinking about what are the ethical issues to do with technology and changing us and extending our lives and helping us to live better for longer in theory. There are really three areas of issues that I can see. And the biggest one is the question of what it means to be human. Are there things about being human that we like and that we value and we want to keep? So what are they? And how do we hold on to them then as technology changes us? How do we preserve that? Are there things about being human that we don't like so much, right? Maybe we don't like dementia and the threat of dementia. Maybe we don't like the loss of mobility. What are the things that we could potentially change that we're not as fond of? But is there, something positive that we're going to lose through fixing a lot of our vulnerabilities and fragility? Because it's those vulnerabilities and fragilities that make us need each other and rely on each other. And even though that can make us profoundly uncomfortable, where would we be if we didn't? If it wasn't clear to us how much we need each other and we could start to pretend that we're not as connected. Now, everything we do is actually reliant on each other in a web of people. So think of your breakfast this morning. How did you get those eggs? Where did they come from? And where did those chickens come from? Where did the farmer come from? How did they get transported to you? We are in this web where we do need each other, but it's masked and made invisible often. So if we do keep fixing anything that makes us visibly need each other, we could be at risk for recognizing the value of that need. And choice, like I said earlier, the decision to embrace a technology, create a technology or not, that's a big one. In our North American culture, the ability to make individual choices is getting to be more and more important. But what does it mean to make an individual choice when my choice affects you in different ways? What does that mean? And who gets to make the choice and who doesn't get to? And justice issues. So let's take a quick look at these. And I'm going to introduce again just a couple of Christian-based questions so that we can be considering what relevance a religion has potentially to this conversation. So things that are important about being human, well, there's that quest for meaning. So how do we find meaning? How does technology affect that quest for meaning? How does technology affect, again, being in a relationship? Is it going to enhance those relationships or is it going to splinter us more? Or will it do both? And how do questions about justice and getting resources that are expensive to people who need them or not have to do with what it means to be human beings? What does it mean to need touch, physical touch? Studies have shown that that's important to our overall health and well-being. So we want to be careful how much we facilitate the ability to be physically apart. We don't want to take away that connection entirely. And so what is it that we really value about what do we want to preserve and why do we want to preserve it? There's a lot of conversation around what it means to age in place, to live at home. What's a home? Who's home? Why are we so attached to one version of home? I don't want to approach this lightly because I know that I wouldn't want to move from wherever I am either. I'm quite certain that would be very, very difficult. At the same time, this overvaluing of staying in the same place as you lose connection, as you lose the capacity to be able to be safe. Why do we have that mindset? Is how do we make it more attractive to consider a change so that you can live better and more fully? And I know that's the big topic of a lot of you who are in this room. So to be thinking about that is important. So question again, we've approached this as if it's a therapy, it's good, the intervention. If it's an enhancement, it's bad. But our understanding of what it means to be an enhancement versus therapy is constantly changing. It's going to get to the point where we'll have more medical interventions, cancer treatments that will become normal, and that will be a really good thing for healing. So that won't be an added extra. It will be an expected normal treatment, as will things like potentially even smart fridges. I don't know, we'll see, or a smart ring. So what is key? What is the dividing point between a bad technology, acceptable technology, and a good one? Well, from a spiritual and religious perspective, and the two aren't always the same, but spirituality and religion at least intersect a lot. It might be the place at which we cease to value each other, the world. We cease to be aware or care about the effects we have on the environment. The interconnection of life gets lost. So that may be one marker of moving into a danger zone. Big question to ask always is, what do we mean by perfect? Do we want a perfect body, a perfect life? Well, we're taught that we want these things. We're sold social media all the time about what makes a perfect body and a perfect life, and what we really should want to be successful. And when we bring this into conversation with aging, that whole topic of what it means to do successful aging becomes elevated. So is it just a matter of being productive, producing something quantifiable, or do the religions have the insight right around the intrinsic value of all life, so that we're of value regardless of what we actually do? Just by being who we are, there is intrinsic value and worth in us. And if we stand back and say, okay, if perfection is not about getting all the goods and things that are marketed to us and having more and more and more, so that we can actually say that we are without flaw because we've fixed everything somehow, and that will never happen, by the way. There'll always be something more to spend money on to try to fix, but more about completeness. Then we change the conversation about perfection and seeking perfection. So what does it mean for you to be complete, to have a sense of completeness in you and in your relationships and the world? And does that shift the conversation again then around what's important to you and how you approach what you want from technology? And from a Christian perspective, again, that healing mandate about love your neighbor and your God with all your heart and soul and your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. What does it mean to love? I really think we need to keep asking that question, because it is related strongly to what it means to be better, and to how we use technology, not just how we use technology, but what technology we choose to create and try to design. So it goes right back to that round table stage of brainstorming. Let's look at choice really quickly. Again, that focus, that emphasis on my personal rights, and my personal rights are important. And certainly AI is endangering some of those rights and adding to surveillance issues. And there's potential for information like facial recognition to be used against us in ways, especially the more marginalized populations, in ways that don't help us. So, you know, if we have facial recognition technology that only does a good job recognizing white male faces, then other people get left out. And right now that's where we're at. So we have to always ask the question around who's creating the science and what's their perspective, because it's going to get embedded in the science unless we have more diverse people's views engaged at the creating and monitoring stages for feedback. This is why it's so incredibly important for technology for aging adults that we have aging adults at the table to give input. It's not just, or it shouldn't just be about making sales. It's about what really helps. And what does it mean to help? Asking that question of what it is that I really, really want is so hard to get to, because we have to be deliberate about what it is that's important to us. We have to ask that question and get to know ourselves and in community with each other, rather than just implicitly accepting the social media messages we get, the marketing messages we get. And bots do make things more complicated. When we develop relationships with bots, the question is it a real relationship? What counts as a real relationship, right? It's like, in many ways, the relationships that we have with anyone that's not human, we might assume that they are like humans, but they're not. It's not the same thing. So is it okay to make ourselves believe that it is the same thing and it's good enough? Or at what point is it not okay? I mean, there have been studies that show that more vulnerable people, including aging adults who have mobility limitations and mild cognitive impairment, are more vulnerable to being sold something deceptive and being sold a friendship with a robot and having that be enough when it's not really enough. Again, though, loneliness and being able to help address loneliness is such an important thing, and bots can potentially help with that. So we need to think again, if we're bringing a religious lens to this conversation, what it means to value and believe that people have intrinsic worth, what it means to believe that we are all connected, what it means to believe, sorry about that. I only have one person who's allowed to call there, and it's my father. He knows that I'm here, but there's some aging related issues there. I'll call him back later. So that understanding that we are part of a web of relationships, and then that changes the conversation. And lastly is the issue around justice. And when we look at justice, we have to look at ageism and ask how ageism affects the use of technology with aging adults, the accessibility or not of aging technology to people who do not have perhaps the same resources. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Who gets to access these technologies? Who doesn't? And the whole question again around what needs to be fixed. So if you haven't seen it, well, how many people have seen the docudrama Fixed? Okay, I highly recommend Fixed. Fixed is produced by MIT scientists in the States who are working on different technologies and are asking these questions. They're being interviewed. Fixed is available through different streaming services. So just do a search and check it out. It's a very powerful documentary that looks at all the way our biases are incorporated in AI and how they exclude and marginalize people who are already marginalized. So we need to be on the lookout for that if social justice is of value for you. Again, a reminder that ageism is so rampant. This goes back a few years to 2018. I don't know if any of you saw the Super Bowl in 2018. Anyone see that? Well, the halftime show, if you remember it, right? There was this big ad by Kia, and it had Aerosmith's hit in the background, and Steven Tyler, their lead singer, right, was there. And Steven Tyler, of course, was 69 at the time and really did look older than that. So they had him playing his hit Dream On in the background. He's driving a new Kia and he's ripping around and going faster and faster in this car. And when he stops, he gets out and he's transformed to 30 years younger. And then the tagline is "Feel something again." Wow. Right? I don't think you need to be young and driving a fast car to feel something. But again, it's the messaging, and we need to deconstruct that messaging and ask a lot of questions about why this is selling. And again, we need to ask questions from a religious perspectives as well around justice and what the duty of heal looks like and what it looks like to safeguard the interdependence of all life, what it means to embrace a principle of co-design and humble co-creating. Because we're going to make mistakes as humans. So the religions well know that we have a capacity for sin or making mistakes or going off the mark. What do we need to safeguard against? And yet at the same time, we've got this duty to move forward, to create for the best. So that means taking some strategic risks in what we do. And we know from different therapies in medicine that initially not everybody lives from them, and then we get better and better at them. So what is a strategic risk that's acceptable? How do we decide? Who gets to decide? And who takes the burden of the risk? big questions, as I was saying earlier, around who gets this technology, because the cost is incredible. I mean, look at those figures, right? And they've got a new sickle cell disease treatment out there, which sickle cell disease, if any of you who are familiar with it, the red blood cells get curved into a sickle shape, and they end up sticking to everything basically, and it kills you. There's no way you can live with sickle cell disease. And now we have a genetic modification therapy that is showing remarkable positive ability to cure this disease. But right now it's about $1 million for treatment, US. Who's going to get it? Why should somebody's life be of more valuable than somebody else's life? How do we decide? Because again, we have limited resources. So there are decisions that have to be made. It's not just an easy thing to say everybody gets it. At the same time, we need to be very aware of why some people don't get it. So we're tying it together now. Just this first early piece in the morning. And a few of the questions that occurred to me are, when we think about aging, what tech do we want? And why do we want it? Just starting to raise some of these ethical issues, but maybe some of you are thinking about reservations you have about some tech. Maybe some of you are thinking about some tech that you'd really like to see created that isn't there yet because you see it as being healing and possible. Maybe some of your fears are more concretized now about what we could risk with tech, what we are risking. I'd love to hear your thoughts.